Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
Ready to talk some fantasy with my friends, Charles.
Yes, we say friends today because we are joined by another fantastic fantasy podcast series. Just one of them today, though, but you know what? We're super thrilled we were able to get him for this very important discussion. Please welcome Stephen from Fantology Books. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's always so much fun to be on with both of you.
Of course, the pleasure's all ours. You know, we were planning to come back fully, officially, regular release schedule, and we couldn't think of a better way to kick off the whole thing than with a collab with Fantology. Fantology, we've collaborated back and forth for a long time now. I guess it's has it been a year already? I guess maybe it has.
Probably over a year.
Time flies in the fantasy podcast business. We started in like November of 2019, which seemed that was before COVID was really much of a thing at all, which is insane.
I know we started like peak pandemic shutdown, locked in, nowhere to go, and so it's been a while, I guess.
And we worked with you probably within the first 6 months or so of doing it. So I would say, we've been doing podcasts together
with Fantology, as we've always said. When we have you on, we love to share that fact. So, and they're also over this year plus of time, they've sort of become our resident Cosmere experts, Cosmere collabs.
Oh boy. Okay.
I know that makes you nervous every time I say it, Stephen, but you're more knowledgeable than we are.
We will see what happens.
But you know what? We're getting better because today we have finished our read of The Way of Kings, which is book 1 of the Stormlight Archive. And it's like, finally, I feel like this has been a huge gap in my fantasy reading career, and now I can show my face in the community for having finally read The Way of Kings. But you guys have all read it before, right?
Oh, Charles, you had never read before.
First read
I
through.
didn't. Wow. Okay, I did not realize that. Oh, this will be fun. Okay.
Yes. He's been hiding behind that beard of his. He might actually shave it off and show his face.
So it's not just Gentlemen Bastards that we're waiting on.
Steven, how could you? I've been hiding. Just people have assumed I've read a whole bunch of stuff I haven't read. But you know what? The podcast has been a good reason for us to read this, and we wanted to come back big. And what better way than with one of the most popular modern fantasy epics of our time, The Way of Kings. And I was super excited to get into this, and Dylan and I knew right away, it's like, okay, well, if we're going to come back and we're going to do Way of Kings, we got to reach out to Fantology, because you guys came on for our Emperor's Soul discussion, and that was a lot of fun. And you guys have made such fantastic content around the Cosmere that I was like, man, I just want them involved as much as we can. So super thrilled to have you on. And guys, if you like what you hear, then please go check out, Fantology Books and listen to their show. And they have a lot of Cosmere content and content on other fantastic fantasy series as well.
We're getting excited for the new Mistborn book coming out in November, The Lost Metal. Have you read those, Charles?
I've read Mistborn. I've read the original trilogy. That was the first series that we ever discussed on the show, was Mistborn. And we both have read it. He's
being evasive about Era 2, though.
Yes, I noticed that.
I just caught up
Era 2
on Era 2. So
no, I mean, the only Sanderson I've read is Mistborn, Warbreaker, Emperor's Soul, and now this Way of Kings. So
didn't you read Elantris or no?
I have not.
Oh, yeah.
So not only will your listeners be upset if we do any spoilers past Way of Kings, but Charles himself will be very mad at me. So I will swear right now, to not do any spoilers past
This
Way of
guy
Kings.
is a professional, Dylan.
You're
This
such a
guy's
pro.
a professional. Dylan,
Yes.
you want to follow up with that?
I know it's a great seg because now I get to do my if you haven't yet read The Way of Kings, though, it's a good time to turn this down in your headphones because we are going to spoil The Way of Kings. Nothing beyond that. Nothing else in the Cosmere. I assume we'll refrain from spoiling anything out there. And yeah, it should be a really fun discussion, and we want to have no holds barred, at least for this particular book. So I'm pumped to get into it.
Yeah, let's not waste any time. The Way of Kings. So, like we said, this is my first read through. I guess we can go around the table and get our reactions for like where this book kind of stands, not just in like Sanderson's work, but in your own opinion, like your initial thoughts to reading through it. And for me, I thought it lived up to the hype in a lot of ways. It's always been kind of touted as Sanderson's magnum opus. I think even he's called it that, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this is his baby. And when he's written such famous works, and I've loved Mistborn for a long, long time, so I was pretty excited to get into this. And I see a lot of Mistborn influence. I see a lot of Wheel of Time influence in here, but it's still very much Sanderson's unique story. And there's so many great themes and characters that I'm looking to get into. But at a high level, I would say I was very impressed by the series, and as epic as it is, Sanderson's a master storyteller, and I just trusted in him to guide me through the whole thing. And it was a very rewarding experience that I think any fantasy reader could just really appreciate and dive into. So at a high level, I thought it was great. Stephen, how many you've read through all of the Stormlight, right? You're caught up. I mean, I see all those beautiful leather-bound Cosmere books behind you. So I presume you've read everything.
I am caught up on the Cosmere. I did a reread before Rhythm of War came out last year. I don't remember if I reread Way of Kings though or not, because I've read it several times. At least 3 times, possibly 4 times.
Wow. And it is,
but it's a lot of book to be reading that many.
There's so many details. There's so many details in it. Like that said, I'm not going to remember everything.
That's well said. So, like, where does the Way of Kings stand for you in amongst Sanderson's work?
Man, it's always hard to do this because there's so much nostalgia that goes into this. Like, I remember reading this back in 2011. I want to say, I think I read it the year after it was released. I think it was a 2010 release. And at the time, I think I waited a little bit on reading it because even though The Way of Kings is kind of an epic name, it also kind of seemed like a boring name to me at the time. It's just like, oh, like there's not much action here in this name. Like, what is this book? And it was super long. And at the time, I hadn't read too many super long books other than most of the Wheel of Time. So that said, after reading it the first time, instantly loved it. It went right to the top of my list, along with The Name of the Wind, Kingkiller Chronicle. And for a long time, I think those have just been like 1 and 2 in terms of my favorite fantasy books of all time. I haven't really reevaluated my list recently at all. So I think I would still probably say like this book and The Name of the Wind are my 2 favorite fantasy books. But part of that is, I read these when I was younger in my formative years, and they really like established my love of fantasy. And it's really hard to go back and say, oh, and now I love these new ones more because those ones were just so important at the time.
Wow. I can't believe it's been that long that this book has been out. I don't know what I've been doing for 10 years, but
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
Dylan, this is your second read through, right?
Second read through. Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I always appreciate, especially with someone like Sanderson's work, when you reread it, that you get to notice all the foreshadow. And there's stuff, I guess I don't want to say it because it actually be spoilers for further book, but I'll just say there's a moment with Shallan that I'm like, it's such obvious foreshadowing. I don't know if Steven's nodding, so I think he knows the moment I'm talking about.
I mean, I can guess. I can guess what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God. But the way that Sanderson places these like foreshadowing moments where a lot of times they come right before an important reveal that you haven't learned yet, it's like perfect timing. We've talked about this with Mistborn in the past too. The guy is just a master. Charles, a master storyteller. He's just a master of weaving together all of these pieces and then having them all come together in the end with that Sanderlanche. And he'll build foreshadowing in that won't come for another couple thousand pages down the line in the series. And he's so patient and so deliberate and so focused on the reading experience that I think I'm not surprised that you enjoy it, even reading it like 3-4 times, Stephen, because there's always so much more to be picking up on. So there's always different levels of like ways you can enjoy Sanderson's work. You can enjoy it at the very base of hey, just kind of taking in this story. I'm not going to dive deep into all this world stuff or whatever. And you're 100% it's going to deliver if that's the way you look at it, or it's going to deliver if you deep dive in, like I'm all into Cosmere lore and all that stuff. So much credit to Sanderson there.
I agree. It's well said. You know, we had that experience rereading Mistborn, where you're like, this guy's doing like sleight of hand with the way he presents foreshadowing details. So I can only imagine what you could pick up on a reread of something with way more details in it than Mistborn, right? So I can only imagine, and I'm excited to read through the rest of the series. But the other thing that, you know, beyond Mistborn that this book has me thinking of is Wheel of Time. And Brandon Sanderson closed out Wheel of Time, and now he's got Michael Kramer and Kate Redding doing the audiobook. It's this giant, these big books that are guaranteed to be like 10 plus books long. So
Charles, not to interrupt, but we should note that Kramer and Redding, their most noteworthy work is their introduction to the Fantology podcast. Right?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That's what they're most known for. You know, Wheel of Time, Stormlight, whatever.
Yeah,
but
maybe that's on page like 200 of their resume.
I know, as if they needed more credentials. You just the first 2 seconds of their podcast is Michael Kramer and Kate Redding's beautiful voices. Great.
And they were so generous to do that for us. Like, I really can't emphasize how grateful we are. That was very cool.
It's so awesome. I can't even. It's such a cool thing that you were able to do, and they're just iconic in the world of fantasy audiobook narrating, and now here they are again invoking that same kind of vibe from Wheel of Time and from Fantology podcast as they are doing in The Way of Kings. And you can't help but compare the two, I would think. But to me, what kind of surprised me about this book that I wasn't expecting was, yes, it's like, obviously it's a massive book and it's epic in scale and it's kicking off this huge series, but it never really felt that way, if that makes any sense. Like, the character POVs is really limited to 4, and he does have a bunch of side things that spin off, but he keeps it to his 4 main POVs. And then throughout most of the book, I don't know, Sanderson just has this absolute mastery of writing where he's able to you trust in him, and he'll just present you with, he'll remind you who the character is. He'll put you in the setting right away. He'll remind you of any details you need to know. And he always keeps the story going. I feel like when I read books like even Wheel of Time or Malazan or, any other big epic series, you kind of have to be like, wait, where I need to go into the back. I need to get to the annex here and remind me who this character is. That never happened once in this book. And I think a large part of that is just Sanderson as an author, like we've always said, is so aware of the reader experience. It's incredible.
And that's interesting because, like you alluded to earlier, there are different levels that you can read these books at. One is kind of like the surface level reader. Let's call this reader my dad, who
Steven's dad.
he likes the books, but is, unaware. He hasn't read any other Sanderson, only vaguely aware that a Cosmere is a thing that he should care about, and and doesn't really care about it, but he just likes the characters and the story. And then there's the readers that are like us, who are real into all the tidbits and like, oh, what does this little chapter summary snippet mean in terms of the larger context of the Cosmere and all of this. So it's amazing that he can keep both level of reader involved.
For sure. And to his credit around that, I just came off reading another behemoth of a book, The Prior of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon.
Oh yeah,
and, this is well, I don't want to distract from this, but I'll ask you your thoughts off the air after. But sure. I'll say I was very ambivalent about the book. There's a lot that she does really well, but something that didn't work as well for me. It's like an 800+ page book, and I could not follow all the different characters that well at all. And she even had one of these character listings in the back, like an appendix I was going back to. I still was like, oh my God, who is this person? And there are probably less characters in that book than there are in The Way of Kings. And the book is hundreds of pages shorter. And at the same time, I never have an issue following which characters, what they're up to, like what their rank is, all that kind of stuff, because Sanderson's writing style is just so clear. And he has this ability with his minor characters to always like give them some sort of hook about them that's memorable. So I think of something like one of my favorite minor characters, or side character maybe is better for him, is like Rock. And just the way that he speaks, and he's always saying like, this thing is not like a thing that one should do, is like, he keeps saying this thing, or it's something like in Mistborn, not that Sazed's a minor character, but Sazed's always like, I think. It's Sanderson just has this ability to remind you through tics and character traits, these cues that, oh, this is that character. He's just, I don't know. It's brilliant. And I don't know exactly how he does it, but I know I'm never confused when I'm reading.
I think another thing he does really well to establish characters is, yes, he creates really complex, cool characters with interesting motivations and all that stuff, but he starts it off pretty simple. Like he says, he just kind of sets up a character almost as like an archetype, or, here's your thief character, here's your heretic character, here's your priest character, whatever. And then from there, he builds onto the layerings, and he reminds you of who it is, but it's a slow burn of adding on additional things. So when you go back to him, you're not like, oh, what are the 20 details I need to know? It's like, here's what I need to know. And then let me add one more thing and one more thing. And then let me remind you. And then let me add one more. Right. And he recontextualizes so well from book to book, from chapter to chapter, whatever, so that the whole time you can follow really well.
That's so true. The way he's able to parcel out information is fantastic. And it's like you said, it's not that it's any more or less complex in nature than Wheel of Time, Malazan, another epic series, but he always makes it seem simple and then layers it on. I agree completely. It's really a craft. I also, something that surprised me for a book this big was like, when you think about the action and what actually happens in this book, it's actually surprisingly contained. I feel like, unlike, say, Mistborn or another work of Sanderson's, this book was very introspective. And I kind of wrote in our discussion topics, like this idea of all the like action and tension, like I'd say 80% of it is coming internally from characters worrying about stuff. And it's a very philosophical book, which surprised me. I never thought of Sanderson as like this philosopher, but he's like, what is a human life worth? So you're like, damn, okay, Sanderson, like, let's explore that. And he takes a lot of time with that. Certainly you get the payoff of exciting action sequences, and he always knows when to kick it up. But I mean, most of the times we're in these characters' heads, like Kaladin is just suffering internally this whole time, and that's mostly what's driving his plot forward. It's a fascinating way to tell an epic fantasy story. It's so much like Lord of the Rings or something, where it's like, oh no, the ring wraith is here, we got to move to this area, and no, now these guys are here, we got to move to this area. But Kaladin's like sitting in a cage just thinking for chapters and chapters, and you're like, this is truly fascinating way to bring excitement and energy towards the story. I don't know if you guys would agree with me on
100%. Yeah, very philosophical and very psychological as well. I mean, Kaladin struggling with depression throughout this whole book, and he's this he has this tendency to ruminate, to get self-defeating, and at the same time he's this incredible leader who's capable of so much. And he's really been beaten down by his life to the point where, I mean, we get this scene where he's sitting on the edge, just thinking about dying by suicide.
that.
And the only thing that saves him is a Syl coming by and giving him poison. But it's like,
Ironically.
yeah. So say, oh, that was a nice gesture. Not, I actually should not be messing around with this stuff because I'll die. But I get where you're going with that, Syl. It's very kind of you. So anyway, yeah, we dive into these moments, and the biggest moments in the book for me are these character growth moments. And it's kind of even the magic system is kind of built around that, right? When these characters come to a realization where they understand Kaladin, for example, on his way into fighting for Dalinar's troops at the end, he figures out the words he's supposed to say, and he figures out that Syl's an honor sprint and all this stuff. And when he says that, that's the big moment that sends him in there. So I think it's like even the magic system, you level up when you have a personal growth moment. Is built around this more. Yeah, exactly.
In the psychology world.
Yes. So during those moments, yeah, it's a great book. I've actually had people who are therapists tell me that they'll recommend their clients read these books.
Nice.
Oh yeah. So if folks don't know, I'm currently getting my PhD in counseling psychology, so I'm kind of in that field, and it's a great portrayal. And I'll say also, on the note of Kaladin as someone dealing with depression, there's another character in Mistborn, I won't say who because it's later in the series, that kind of like deals with depression, where it is widely considered not as satisfying the way that that character is. Yeah, like dealing with that is written, but Kaladin, it's written so well. So props to Sanderson for that growth.
Kaladin especially is kind of the character of this book. We get all of his backstories. Charles, did you find as you were reading that those backstories really helped with some of these payoffs that we all agree are so cool?
Yeah, I enjoyed.
I should say flashbacks. Did I say backstories? Flashbacks is the word.
Same thing.
They're close enough. To me, the using the timeline to tell a narrative has always been one of my personal, like, whatever. Like, can't you just tell me beginning to end? But I did enjoy getting to learn more about Kaladin, and I definitely think, like you were alluding to, Stephen, this is Kaladin's book. Just because he does the most, and we get into his backstory and all of that. And yeah, I love that.
So you didn't find, so one thing that I thought I've always loved about the book is the structure of the flashbacks, of taking you at the beginning up to the point where he's super awesome. And then next chapter, he's a slave. And so as a reader, it's so jarring, like, what just happened? Why in this position? And you don't find out until way, close to the end of the book. And I thought that single thing was enough of a conflict to just like drive me through all of these pages of him just sitting around in the slave cart and moping around and stuff. Because the whole time I'm like, what in the world happened to take him from awesome to slave? And then the final reveal is so satisfying to figure out, but also so infuriating to learn about. Right. And that's gonna, further drive the plot into the future as well.
Yeah, that's well said. I know that whole time I was sitting there being like, what did Kaladin do to fall from grace?
And he'll say, because people ask him, he'll say things like, light eyes don't like when you turn down a gift that they offer you. So you kind of get these hints. It's like, okay, what happened? And everyone's been talking over and over again about this, like, oh, if you kill someone with a shard blade, then you win the shard blade, and now you're light eyes. And you do also know that there is a shard bearer like coming into the fight, when Kaladin was, in his awesome Kaladin soldier mode in the beginning. So you can start to piece some of that together, but you never could have figured out that Amaran reveal where that's just a savage moment. I mean, straight out of like a Joe Abercrombie book almost, where he's just like, this guy just got his life saved by Kaladin, and then he kills all of Kaladin's remaining friends in front of him. And like, totally messes with the story. So it seems like he won the Shardblade. It's crazy. So I love them. I like the way the flashbacks work with that kind of stuff. That's a huge reveal. That Amaran one's so good.
Come on, Charles.
Hey, I liked it. And like I said, like it's the way, this book is driven. There's very key moments of physical action in this book, and so it's surprisingly sparse, but it didn't leave me wanting more. It's just that the moments that he chose to have action were just that much more impactful, and the rest of the time they're pondering like what is the right way to take action. They're suffering over like, when do I try and rush in and save somebody? When do I let somebody die? When do I let it go? When do I take action? All these things. And you're just trying to do the right thing. Like Kaladin was trying to save someone because he knew he could. He didn't want to leave people behind. Then he felt guilty about killing someone. And then he gets betrayed. It's like all that from one piece of action of him fighting that shard bearer. So to me, that's always the driving point of fascination. And I think kind of keeping that back until maybe like 75% into the book, where you didn't know how betrayed he really was. Like, we know he just hates Light Eyes, just totally has can't stand him, but you don't really fully appreciate why until that reveal. And I think by waiting until kind of towards the end of his arc to do that was an interesting choice and an important choice, because you needed to be a bit more unbiased to gauge Kaladin's actions. And then right at that reveal is when he decides he's going to help another Light Eyes, right after that. And that is a very important, like, one than the other, because that just makes the action of saving Dalinar that much more.
Great point.
He's ready to get hurt again, basically. He's putting himself out there.
And it also then gets juxtaposed against Dalinar's decision to give up a shard blade, which is like the exact opposite. He gets saved by someone giving up a shard blade instead of getting screwed over by someone taking a shard blade. So all that juxtaposition, we don't get that without the use of this flashback stuff. So well said, Charles. That's part of why I love it.
Charles, did you think, as after the whole tower climax and everything, as they were trudging back, did you foresee a somewhat of a happy ending to the book? Like, did you see that Dalinar might step in and save Kaladin? Because there's a sense of dread here after the big heroic moment.
I'll say this about Sanderson. I'm almost always expecting some sort of satisfying, I'm using air quotes, payoff, generally happy ending. So I was pretty confident that this book wasn't going to end in complete despair. And so I was like, I wonder what moment of like heroics are going to happen at the end of this book. I couldn't foresee necessarily who was going to save who, but I think we were waiting for that moment of heroism. But what this book does that makes it so unique to me compared to other fantasy books I've read is that, Kaladin will save the day, but Sanderson never lets Kaladin or Dalinar or Shallan off the hook for any action that they take, even the heroic ones. And I that's what makes this book a bit more modern feeling to me and a bit more unique compared to other Sanderson works. Is he's like, Kaladin, you just like saved everybody. He's like, yeah, but I saved 10 people and killed like 30 people on the opposing side, and I actually kind of liked them just by the way they were showing me honor in the battlefield. Like, was it worth killing this person to save that person? Did I do the right thing? Like, I'm happier, but was that like virtuistically the right thing to do? You know, he's still not sure, and he ends the book not being sure. The only peace he can find is when he's eating stew with his friends, which I appreciated quite a bit. But that's the interesting thing for me. It's like he's heroic, but he's also still not sure. And this book constantly has this theme of honor and the value of human life, that it's constantly going back and forth. It's like, can you be heroic without also being kind of hypocritical at the same time? And that to me is the more fascinating piece. Like, he is heroic, but he still doesn't get off that easy. He still has to suffer internally over being heroic.
I think that almost gives it an element of, I know this term gets overused, but it's a little grimdark, where there's no absolute moral right or wrong, but it feels different than the books that are more classified as grimdark, like the Mark Lawrence, the Broken Empire trilogy, or like Abercrombie, who we all love. But because with Sanderson, there's always this feeling of hope underneath it all. Like, things are going to work out in some way. And bad things may happen, but ultimately, like, right will prevail somehow. You know, bad things will happen, but we are going to win, right? With Abercrombie, it's more of like, is anyone ever right here? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's something that I do appreciate about Sanderson, and we're big grimdark fans, but when you start reading a ton of grimdark, it is nice to read Sanderson and have someone who's just like uncynical and willing to have heroic people do heroic things. And I know for me, moments like when Kaladin and the bridge crew go back and save Dalinar, moments like where Dalinar gives up Oathbringer because it's an honorable thing to do. There's a lot of payoff there, and you don't want that to be the only thing that any characters ever do. You don't want just be heroes doing heroic things, but Sanderson makes them earn it. Sanderson also has characters that, you know, are more morally gray, but are real heroes in the book. They're, you know, they're true heroes. They have faults, but they do the noble thing. And I do really like that. It feels like old school fantasy, but with a modern feel to it.
I agree. That's interesting. And Stephen, the comparison to grimdark is interesting, because it's like Dylan was saying, it's like there are heroes, but where the grimdark kind of element comes in is that being a hero isn't that easy, and there is a cost to it. And what I like about this book, you know, say we love grimdark, but it's comes like, oh, if you're being good, you're being naive, and if you're being bad, you're being practical. You know, it's kind of like the grimdark way. Whereas in this, it's like all they want to do is do good. They just don't know how. And they never feel like they've really done a good job, because there's always a price or a cost, or it has to involve killing. Is like all I want to do is protect my friends. Like, that's like, why is that so hard? And they struggle with being heroes, and anytime they try and do something heroic, they end up, you know, killing a bunch of people on the enemy side. And that to me is where the unique flavor of this book comes in. And it's like, it's more honest too. It's not just some like satire on the classic good versus evil. It's like, this is good versus yourself. It's like good versus your internal monologue, because when you're in a position of power, you have to make tough choices, and then you have to live with those tough choices. And I think Kaladin and Dalinar are the ones that really show that the most. And you get some really great quotes out of it, kind of this whole idea of like paying it forward business. Like, you have to be the good you want to see in the world. There's one line that I love. Strength does not make one capable of rule. It makes one capable of service, which is such a good line. And it's like, yeah, we are powerful to protect others. And sometimes that means, you know, doing things we don't like to do and weighing these heavy costs. There's also a line somewhere about like, of like, the common man saw their king doing work, then they might appreciate the hard decisions that the ruler has to make, that is more mental because they have to make these tough decisions. I kind of forget the quote, but it's permeated throughout the whole story. And that to me is like the fascinating uniqueness to the tone of this book.
Yeah, I do love that scene where Dalinar goes out and he just starts doing labor himself. He's doing it with like his shard blade and stuff, if I'm remembering
These are good
correctly.
for more than just killing.
Exactly.
Isn't he like digging a latrine pit or something like that?
Something like along those
building
lines.
A wall.
Yeah,
he's digging a trench of some kind.
Yeah, just like blue collar work, and he's out there doing it, and he is thinking through this like, okay, we have some of the most amazing technology in our hands with these sharp blades. It's like all we use them for is killing other people. Why? Imagine if we used all of them to actually build and create and all this kind of stuff. And he's just one guy out there making very little difference when he's doing that. We're actually like, actually, Dalinar, you're best used elsewhere right now. I do think like Navani comes up to him and she's like, what are you doing there? He's like, I need to build things. I don't know. Like, please lead your army.
Needed to think for a while. He needed some space.
But yeah, it does have those elements to it, and those philosophical things that I know Charles was talking about. And we get Kaladin with the like, can you protect people by killing people? Like that's the golden question that he's grappling with throughout this whole book. And again, we don't get that answered. It's more questions than answers.
Yeah, the question of the greater good is something that comes also with Taravangian, who I think Charles, you don't know a whole lot yet about, but you kind of get a sense that there's something going on there.
The epilogue is
from the epilogue
about his intentions. And it is very like Machiavellian how he speaks about the like, because he's the one who he sent Seth to go kill all those leaders. Right. So it's like, and he is trying to justify his actions, and he is putting himself in the role of the hero of his own story. So I do always appreciate when villains do that.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm trying to stop the world from ending. We're all going to die anyway. So like, okay, not a bad point, I suppose.
And as you read,
goes against the philosophy. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, well, as you read more, you'll continue to learn more about him, and you'll recontextualize more about some other characters that might surprise you, but I think really kind of lends itself to this discussion of like, what is a hero, what is a villain, can you be both? How do you justify that in your mind? It's the one thing about Sanderson is like every book you read of his, it always recontextualizes the previous books and character and what you read before, and that makes it always exciting because it just blows your mind every time.
Right.
It's out of control how much you can get out of a reread of this, and like even just reading straight through, and how he continues to develop and pile on and weave, and like this other theme that he keeps weaving in is this idea of honor. To me, it's so fascinating to see the honor that Kaladin is learning from his father about like, we help people even though they hate us. You have to start with an act of like unreciprocated kindness to get the ball rolling and all of that. And then you have Dalinar and the air quotes honor amongst all the high princes who are like, oh, the honorable thing is to, prance onto the field and win your shard plate. It's like that'll be an honor to your house, So and the way that those two things like kind of duel each other, and then how Kaladin, brings Bridge 4 together by just like setting a good example for the team. And it's like, hey, I'm going to start exercising, and I'm going to start, training, and I'm going to start like healing people and rescuing the wounded and this and that. And the way he's just able to become a leader through that, I thought was just a great underused theme. And talk about building up a hero, it's like, what better way than through pure virtue of just setting a good example. And you root for Kaladin even when he kills a whole bunch of people. So they're the enemy side, though, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and but it does come with more complexity, like we've talked about, and does come with Kaladin at least ruminating about
Putting
whether
a
or not
target on
it
his
was
back.
right. Yeah, and that is to us. We're talking a little bit off the air about this. Charles and I were before you got here, Stephen, and we're talking about the growth of Sanderson in that greater moral complexity around the actions of his heroes. And I was like, yeah, it's a lot different than from in Mistborn, where it's like, yeah, Vin, just kill them all. It's like it doesn't matter.
And the theme in
It's
Mistborn
like,
was trust in your friends.
trust in your friends and kill the rest. So it's yeah. Now even the Parshendi who at right now they are, you don't really know what's going on with them. You don't really know what's going on with the Parchment. You do get the reveal from Yasna where she's like, they're the Voidbringers, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But you really don't know what's going on, but you get these moments from both Dalinar and Kaladin's perspective where they're killing them and they're like, these are not just like, for lack of a better way of putting it, they're not just
seem
orcs.
to have they have more honor
Yeah.
than the high princes do, it seems.
Oh yeah. I mean, even like you've got Sadeas just leaving Dalinar to die, all his troops just going
After
away.
he saved
and
his life.
Like, yes. And he's just looking back and he's like, oh, bye, old friend. And
was
then
nothing we could
we've
do.
got then we've got this moment with the Parshendi shard bearer where they're like saluting each other at the end, like, good fight, respect, see you next time. So it's that there's more going on there. You just don't know exactly what at this time.
Mhm.
And yeah, Sanderson humanizing this other side, and even though they aren't human. Well, we're used to a lot of these from Wheel of Time, and we like Trollocs, or from Lord of the Rings, orcs. Like the Parshendi, there's more going on than that. We just at this point wouldn't know exactly what.
Well said.
Yeah. If you're looking for a good quote about honor, Charles, just wait for the next book.
I had to not say it when he was talking about honor. I was like,
coming up, huh?
Yeah, I was like, well, Charles, insert here.
Probably the most quotable line in the series to date.
Wow. And it's in the next book.
It's a chills moment.
It is in the next book.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I can just tell that that's a big theme that he's really thinking about. And I don't even know when he's written this book. I mean, Sanderson, has all his good hooks plotted out and everything, but I feel like part of the secret sauce to this is I'd be curious to see what he says, but I feel like he hasn't quite ever solved it. It sounds like one of those unsolvable philosophical things that he keeps waffling back and forth on about honor versus doing the right thing versus being a hero. Yeah. And that's what keeps you drawn in. And that's what keeps the tension of this book going, because Dylan, it's like you said, the breakthrough moment wasn't Kaladin killing the Parshendi. It was right before, where he realizes that he has to go and save Dalinar, that's the right thing to do. That is the climax. And then the resulting action of him going and saving him was almost secondary to the psychological breakthrough that he went through. So I think that to me is one of the more brilliant things, at least thematically, about this book. And I can tell that he's going to be pontificating on some of these themes, philosophizing on these things for thousands of pages. Thousands of pages. Well, I think we did a good job covering Kaladin and Dalinar. I think we should move on to the other side of the map here and talk about Shallan a bit. She didn't get too much love in our character, who's your favorite character? She was a clear third. I mean, Kaladin swept. Dalinar second.
Was this just through Way of Kings, or just
in general?
Okay. Which series overall?
So I'll read now. We've got 14 hours left as of the time of this recording. It'll be like a month ago or whatever by the time this airs. But it was just, who is your favorite character in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson? And I put Kaladin, Dalinar, Shallan, and I give an other for comment. And For what it's worth, I guess I picked the three right ones because the other only got 6.5% of the vote. But then Kaladin got 54.8% of the vote, over half.
Yeah.
Dalinar 28%, Shallan 10.8%. So
that doesn't surprise me. I have to say it doesn't surprise me.
Or what? The only thing that surprises me is that Dalinar didn't do better, I guess. Like 28% for Dalinar compared to 55% basically for Kaladin. I would have had Dalinar at maybe 35% or something like that.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because the first book is so Kaladin, it establishes him so much, and he continues to be a favorite throughout. And Dalinar, while we know a significant amount about him at this point, we don't learn all of, we don't get to know him, his ins and outs until a little bit later in the series. Yeah. So I wonder if people have already established Kaladin as their favorite character and nothing's really going to change that. I mean, for what it's worth, I would have voted Kaladin probably for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, once you've picked a favorite character after reading 1,000 pages, you're probably pretty solidified in that. But Dalinar is actually my favorite. And I think he became my favorite later on in the series.
You were able to rethink a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
props to you.
It's shocking if Kaladin's not your favorite at this point. Yeah.
Clear Kaladin, but that's just almost by default because we just get to know him so much better and he's the driving force of the whole story. So it's hard to find reasons to like some of these other characters more. But I don't know. Shallan's story was always kind of fascinating because she knew she was going to do this betrayal that she was dreading. And that was kind of her. Again, we're talking about this like internal conflict. It's certainly prevalent in her POV plot arc in this book as well. It's like 90% like, oh, I love to learn. And I really like my teacher, Jasna, but I have to do this thing because of my family and I'm just dreading it and it's coming. And the more I stay here, the more I like being here. And it's so problematic. It's her conflict and that's fun. It's entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, Shallan, I think it's just, there's by far the least action going on. And it's a lot of her kind of studying. And I think that the other thing about Shallan, I like Shallan. So, don't at me if you're a big Shallan person. I'm on your side here. But one of the things that bothers me about her is we're just told over and over again how witty she is. And maybe if Sanderson didn't have every other character being like, oh, Shallan, you're so clever, you're so witty and funny, then I wouldn't have such a reaction. I'd actually just be like, oh yeah, like she's quippy. She's always saying some funny, snarky stuff. But just the number of people that tell us how clever she is and how witty, it just gets on my nerves. And I'm like, okay, that's not actually that funny. So it's like that kind of annoys me about Shallan. It's not even a Shallan thing. It's what everyone else is saying about Shallan. And that bothers me. I know I'm not alone with that. And that's kind of a Sanderson thing, is telling us how witty his witty characters are. I think Serene in Elantris kind of gets that treatment as well. So that part bugs me.
Yeah, she does kind of come across maybe a little more of an archetype as like the plucky farm girl that's, smarter than everyone else in her village. And here she is now like faced with some challenges and she's going to rise to the occasion. You learn a lot more about her later on in the series. So I don't want to say she's a bad character, but I do think some of the humor is not always my taste. It's not quite as clever as like the Abercrombie humor in
not
his
in the
books.
Same stratosphere.
No, it's not. It's not
in the same. But Abercrombie's like, you name the best guy in the genre.
Yeah. When it comes to the funniest,
that's fair. Yeah,
it's not quite Abercrombie or Eames or anything.
But some people do like really love her humor, and if that's your preference, like all power to you. For me, not always my favorite. There's some stuff that Sanderson does that really is funny that I'll laugh at, but there's some that's just kind of cringe, and Shallan has a lot of those cringe moments.
Yeah, as
Yeah,
much as I love to celebrate Sanderson as an author, one of the like flaws that I've started to pick up on, if you could even call it that, after reading a bunch of his books, is whenever a character is supposed to be clever, they always just every response they have is I'm going to do air quotes again, a witty, like quick snapback of like, oh,
Yeah.
here's a clever thing that I'm going to say. And like, you can tell that Sanderson's being as funny as he possibly can be when he writes those, but it's just like, oh, dude, come on. Like when I read, is it Warbreaker, where they have the character that's like a god, and like he every 2 seconds was like, oh, I'm too drunk for this,
Light
or
song,
whatever
I
it is,
think,
or like,
right?
oh, being a god is so exhausting. Yeah, light song. And you're like, okay, like chill with the late night material. We get it. You're the witty character. Let's kind of get past that. You know, his way of expressing wit and cleverness is these quick response one-liners that comment on what the person just said and like turning it back on them. And you're like, this again with Shallan. And even like in the thing, it's Shallan, it's like, oh, I do that all the time, don't I? People say it's annoying. And it's like, well, at least you're aware of it. That helps. That was like right in the beginning.
And some people, that's their humor, and that's fine. For me, I'm more of the sarcasm, the dry humor is really what kind of makes me chuckle.
Right. I think it's funnier when Rock is like making a rock soup. Like that to me is funny. And like everyone's asking, like, I know you put rocks in it. And he's like, how dare you? Like, that's funny.
Oh, Rock is really funny. I love Rock as a character. And just the ideas of Rock's culture are really funny. Just like how he looks down on everyone for like, even just that he thinks everyone's taking way too much oxygen down here, I think is really funny. Just the airsick lowlander joke always lands for me.
Yeah. But Dylan, you had some nice things you wanted to say about Shallan?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Shallan has some of the interesting moral quandaries going on as well. A lot of them it's tough with Shallan because the next book is going to be a much bigger one.
There's a lot to kind of talk around in only this book.
Yeah.
She does get the best kind of reveals in this, like setup payoff kind of reveals in this book, you know, when she learns about Jasna's true nature of being able to transmute without the soul caster, and then like there's an assassination and there's poison, like that stuff is fascinating, and like that was some more of the intriguing action in the book. So I thought that was fun, and I do like the idea of Jasna as well being this basically straight up heretic who's just going around dunking on everyone with her philosophy. And Shallan's just trying to make some sort of relationship with her, and she's just not capable of it. And like seeing that start to come together, it felt very honest, and it got kind of sweet at the end too. About how you start to see Jasna kind of let some walls down that she's had up for a very long time. So I thought that was a very interesting dynamic as well.
And it hits back to the previous question of like, well, can we kill bad people? Because it's going to be for the greater good when Jasna goes and just assassinates all of the, were they thieves? What was
like muggers? We don't exactly know what they were we know at least they were going to steal from them, and they're kind of like, they might have killed us, or
and Jasna's like, well, you know, they deserved it, and Shallan cannot get her head around it. And eventually that's what leads her to decide, like, okay, now I can go ahead and commit this crime because Jasna herself is, you know, capable of this thing. And so therefore,
Yeah, it's almost like they complement each other and they have a lot to learn from each other, where Jasna's like too logical and Shallan is like too naive,
ruled by emotions.
And then they're just kind of somewhere in the middle is this well-adjusted human being. So they're just supporting each other through that, I think. And they both see like what the other one has to learn and what they can teach each other and all that. They see good things in each other. So that to me was a very strong part of the Shallan arc, was their relationship.
that moment with Yasna killing those people, that's like by far the best scene in that whole, in the Shallan point of view.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think, and one of the best in the whole book, I think. It's just, it kind of comes out of nowhere. It feels like, because up until that point, that side of the story had been so, I guess, tame. And then it's just like, oh my God, she just murdered like 4 people. And I think that it is a great moment that illustrates that counterbalance that Charles is going on about, where Yasna is like, well, actually, if you look at these 4 philosophies, then like I was justified in doing it in all of them. And Sean's like, yeah, but you just killed those people. Like, that's not right.
Like we didn't know what they were going to do. They hadn't done
Yeah.
anything yet. They were just menacing.
And the emotional side of Shallan and just kind of her, I don't know what to call it, like her intuition is like, no, I just watched people like go up in flames and die painful deaths. Like, I know that's not right. Yeah, like
Right.
I'll look up all the philosophies, and she's smart enough to understand, like, oh yeah, if you do look through this lens, Yasna was justified for this reason. But she does just have that intuitive side that Yasna doesn't have as much, where she's like, I still don't think you should go around murdering people. And you gotta respect that, because I mean, it's complicated, but I don't know. I would have been really distraught if I was in Shallan's
Pretty
point of view there.
traumatizing
I
thing
would
to
not
witness, for sure.
Yasna was not bugged at all. She just went out with the intention of doing that.
She's like, oh, that made total sense. It's like, no wonder you're alone.
Logic.
Yeah.
Oh God. I do love how I love that Sanderson, Sanderson's a very religious guy himself. And I think his willingness to try to like take on Yasna's point of view around religion and like give it its due, rather than, projecting his own views and like straw manning her, like making her like be wrong. It's like, no, she's super smart, and like here's how she would see all those things, and you might not agree, but she's very good at justifying her points. I respect that a lot from Sanderson. He's really, props to him.
Yeah, for sure. He's always really good at taking an honest look at whatever point of view that his character is coming at, and doing so many different types of characters. And sometimes he does it by like doing research and gathering opinions from people in real life that he knows, which just makes it seem super realistic. So yeah, major props there. With the Yasna action scene, I guess it kind of parallels, or it's a little similar to the opening sequence with Zeth, where he's showcasing the magic. Yasna's showcasing the magic in a different way. Both are killing people and kind of setting up this question of, like what is right, what is honorable, etc. And I think doing both of those things is another thing Sanderson does really well. Of we've heard it a lot, but the show don't tell type entry into the magic system, because we don't want to sit around and have you tell us all about, here's the way that the magic works as I open up to page 1 of the textbook. But you can see directly, and you get more of an explanation with what Zeth is doing than what Yasna is doing so far. And so, Charles, I'm guessing you have an inkling that there's a lot more complexity to this whole
I can tell that there's a ton of stuff going on with this magic system. Like there's like an appendix at the end of the book that goes into this balances out with this and can transmute this. I'm like, none of this happened in this book. I have no idea what he's like. What does blood have to do with this, have to do with that? And I can tell that there's a lot more to come, but I know what I need to know to appreciate the story so far, and I'm very happy with that. And it's like you said, you have the Zeth, Jasna doing similar things. And yeah, I think to pile on about Sanderson's ability to have these kind of, like Dylan was saying, that word counterpoints. It's textbook Sanderson. Even the magic systems have pushes and pulls and opposites and stuff. And I think the way he approaches characters is the same way. It's like no character is going to be like the preachy, always right straw man person. It's like the counterpoints around them or in their own characters, what makes them a character. So I don't think he would ever fully buy into one idea for a character. And I that's all these characters in this book, I think are great and well thought out. There's no one I really have a problem with. Even like Shallan's brothers, who are the obvious bad guys. It's like this where he was pontificating while torturing an animal, pulling off legs one by one. I'm like, okay, Sanderson, I get it. He's the bad guy. You know, Sanderson's very good at making a character very obviously the bad guy. I don't know if there's going to be anything good about him. We'll see, but I can kind of tell that he's just an all-around unpleasant human being. But you know, he's the way they describe him, like ripping legs off of crabs, and like some are too small to have the satisfying like pop of the leg coming off, so he needs to find the bigger animal and pull that one off. I'm like, dude, this is gnarly stuff.
You get a sense that Shallan comes from a pretty messed up background.
Yeah, props to Shallan for being as well adjusted even as she is.
Right. Well, it sounds like the way he wrote it is like she was kind of shielded from the abuse of the dad. So that's why her brothers are more messed up than her, I think, was kind of like what they were getting at. We don't know the full story, but I kind of picked up on those details a bit in his chapters of like, yeah, Shallan was just locked away, but we bared the grunt of his bad deeds.
Well, read and find out, Charles.
Yeah.
I will read and find out for sure. So
Raffo, as the kids say.
Yeah, beyond the raffle. I think I heard Michael Kramer say that once somewhere.
Somewhere.
May have been the Fantology intro. I don't know. But
it might be confusing it because that's his most noteworthy work. You know, people attribute the quotes to the most noteworthy.
Yeah, if there was like an IMDb page for fantasy audiobook narrators, Michael Kramer's would be like, you know, Wheel of Time, Fantology, Way of Kings, in like their known for section, and then you scroll through, and then there's like 200 other things.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he did Mistborn too. It's like.
We need like the international fantasy audiobook narrator database. Someone's got to make that.
Actually, we really do. There are times where I listen to a narrator, I'm like, this guy's awesome, or this woman's awesome. I want to hear more of their work. And I don't know if there's a way to easily look that up.
Someone's got to make sure ifandb.com is available so we can snag that URL.
It really rolls off the tongue.
Off the tongue. That's a winner. But so I think we've covered Shallan. For the sake of time, we can move on to the last like main POV character, who is Szeth. Szeth, to me, you know, Stephen, you were talking about in the beginning how Sanderson slowly rolls out the facts you need to know about the greater world building that's going on. I always felt like Szeth was the opportunity to remind the reader, like, hey, reader, remember there's a greater story going on here. Like, don't forget, like, you spent a lot of time with Kaladin just now, but here's Szeth using mysterious powers to kill someone mysteriously. Like, there's so much more intrigue going on here. That's kind of always how I felt Szeth's role was in this story.
I think that's a good way to put it. That and the interludes in general, although those maybe we're more of like, here is the world, not necessarily like there's a big conflict in the world. It's just kind of more like a showcase of different areas, which are maybe not always super interesting. But Szeth, that's a good way to describe it. And it's interesting that it comes right after the prelude to the entire Stormlight Archive, which is very much, I mean, I hate to say it's info dumpy, but it kind of is. Like, we don't know exactly what's going on. There's these mysterious people with huge blades, and this big war has just ended. And so you're just like, what is this? And maybe it's not info dumpy because we don't get any info really dumped to us, but it makes it seem really kind of like a formidable book to jump into. It's almost like this could be an intro to a Malzahn book. But then the next chapter is like, okay, here's this one guy doing cool stuff with magic in a really concentrated scene.
Right. I think that's well said, you know, because none of the POV characters are really magical. Kaladin, you discover has these magical abilities at like the end of the book, but Zeth is really the only one that's showing us like the full potential of what's going on in terms of the magic system in the series. So it's always kind of like this harbinger of, oh, that's some really neat stuff that none of our POV characters are really even know exists. And then of course, the inciting incident of this whole thing was when Zeth killed Gavilar at the beginning, and that starts the war with the Parshendi and all of that. So it was kind of like this inciting incident that creates this whole thing for all the other characters. So there is this bigger world building piece to everything that Zeth does. And it's kind of like, who is he? Where is he from? Who contracted him? Why is he killing these people? Like, all of these, like, what does he even do? He's like running on the ceiling and like killing 100 guys. It's like, what is going on? And then we're back to Kaladin in a cage, thinking about life, collecting flowers. It's like we are all over the place, but it always comes in at the right moments, I think, to like pep up the action, especially in the beginning of the book.
So it's something that Sanderson likes to do, is kind of introduce this is what you can be capable of with the magic system, but our main characters aren't really there yet. And or at least so it's almost like at the beginning of a video game where they'll do a tutorial sometimes where you're like not even the actual character that you're going to be playing as, but you're someone who's already got like all the things you're going to unlock later on, that, and you kind of go around, you learn how to do all this stuff, and then it's like, okay, but now you're back to this level 1 person,
like, oh man.
exactly
So it's like, that's the purpose that Seth seems to serve here, is to remind us. Obviously there's a lot of other things that he does in the plot, but early on I think that he's just kind of like, here's what we're capable of. We'll get there eventually. Like, I'm going to write I'm going to write 10 of these books. So
if the Way of Kings was a video game, you'd start with Zeth and you just wreck a bunch of stuff, and then it would show the opening credits, and then you are Kaladin. It's like, use the R stick to walk around. Objective: collect 20 poison flowers. You're like, oh, what? We were just doing the cool thing. Now I'm collecting stuff.
He does it kind of with Kelsier too early on. Mistborn, right? Like, he's just going around doing all this, and not spoiling Mistborn, this is like one of the first few scenes of the thing is Kelsier just going around using his powers, doing awesome stuff. And
although that's even a little more off, that's a little more off camera, that intro with Kelsier.
Well, there's like the prologue is off camera, but then maybe it's not the first few scenes, but pretty early on.
Once the training
there's some like heist situation where he goes full powers.
And that part, it kind of like the Seth thing is like, we know our main character isn't capable of doing this stuff yet, but it's exciting to see it kind of in action, and then we get hopes of all this stuff going on, and maybe even people fighting against each other who are both using these kind of things. So it's like, that kind of stuff is cool to think about.
And it helps you understand what Kaladin is going through even before Kaladin himself understands, because you're like, wait a second, I've seen someone else do something pretty similar to this. Okay, I kind of get a hint of what
Kaladin realizes he can make two things stick together, and then you have cut to Zeth, who's running along the ceiling and like cutting a dude's head off. You're like, okay,
flipping gravity.
Exactly. So like, okay, somehow those two things are related. So Zeth, fascinating.
He's cool too with the philosophical stuff, we should say, like the whole truthless thing where he's like, I hate everything that I'm doing right now. Like, I'm not a bad person. Like, I just really stick to these ideals to the point where I can't disobey what all these awful people are telling me, but I really abhor all the things that I'm doing. And there's a moment too in, I think, his last scene with Taravangian, and he's like, I could just kill him. He's like, of course, it's like, of course, Seth didn't do that.
Right.
Like, even in the prose, it says like, of course he didn't do that. But it's like, he's weirdly aware, like, technically, if I go against everything I know about how I'm supposed to live as a truthless person, like I could just kill this guy right now and it'd probably make things better, but he doesn't do it. So it's cool to be in his head. He's kind of grappling with that.
Wasn't Taravangian even saying that Seth was being like way underutilized or something as an assassin?
Yeah.
Was that, and that was something, because again, it goes to show you like how disconnected modern civilization is from like the impending doom that's coming based on the old magic. This is another very Sanderson-esque thing of like, this was stuff that's been kicked off generations ago, and you're so detached from it, you don't even recognize as a society what's happening to you. And Zeth plays a large part in us keeping that in our minds as well, of like, wow, this is an old magic that's being totally misused and underutilized and all of that.
And Dalinar's visions really help with that as well. You see enough little snippets of like, here's what used to be possible, and it's so much cooler than what you primitive people are doing now.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting because we, at the end of Zeth's arc, when he meets King Taravangian and tries to assassinate him, and then it's revealed that he was the mystery master, that he had this secret hospital where he was killing people and recording their last words. But he also adds Dalinar to his kill list, which is like, ooh, spicy. And then you have Shallan and Jasna being like, oh, let's go meet my uncle Dalinar, and you're like, oh my god, everyone's connected to Dalinar right now, and they're all gonna converge potentially. And it was another interesting connection of how Zeth is going to tie a bit more directly into the narrative, I think, with some of our POV characters in the future.
One thing that I always love in these types of books are the crossovers in the POV characters, especially when the reader knows more about them than the characters themselves do, because then it just kind of creates for some like, oh, I figured this out, or oh, this is funny type of moments for the readers. And one criticism I could see of this book is you don't get too many of those. The only times are really like with Kaladin and Dalinar, because their viewpoints are together, and with Adolin, I suppose. But I
mean, that's one of the payoffs of an epic fantasy series, right? You have these huge characters, and then they have their little like collabs every once in a while. They're crossovers, like you said. And I feel like Sanderson's holding on to a lot of cards just because the scale of the series is, my understanding, going to be super big. So big enough that you don't need too many crossovers in the first 1,000 pages. You'll get them in the next couple thousand, I guess.
Yeah.
But on the bright side here, we have characters actually, like you said, Charles, converging toward the end of book one, where when you compare it to something like A Song of Ice and Fire, where or Wheel of Time, where
I think Song of Ice and Fire is characters are all, I see where you're going.
Sure. But all the characters are actually kind of together, or at least a lot of the characters are together early on in those series. And then it just starts spreading out and out and out and out. And everyone's off doing their own stuff. And it's like, what is the story about now? And at least, I mean, it's another amazing thing of how Sanderson respects his readers and is such a great storyteller, is he is actually already moving all of his characters in this epic fantasy toward each other to tell one story rather than like a bunch of disparate ones. So I really appreciate that.
Song of Ice and Fire is a good comparison. They're like, through the first book, people are like, I've heard of Daenerys Targaryen, like surely she couldn't be important at all.
Right. Exactly. And then you have characters who are like, oh, I'm going to go rescue these two characters. Like, you're going the wrong way. We've known this for about 3 books. Turn around. Like, why are we reading this again? Character will go unnamed for the sake of spoilers, but my Game of Thrones people know who I'm talking about. But yeah, it's a good comparison. And Sanderson is, he understands the reading experience better than anyone in the game, as far as I'm concerned. And so, like, that's his way of like hooking you into the next book, is this, you know who Dalinar is very well, even if you haven't been paying very close attention. So when everyone's like, "Oh, go get Dalinar," you're like, "Oh, I see. Everyone's gonna come together." I get it. It's a very simple way that these guys, but I imagine it's not going to be simple on how they get there, when they get there, what they do when they get there. But at least like we know the direction the book's going in, and we get it conceptually, which is another wonderful way he balances the epic nature of the series while keeping the plot pretty simple.
He always likes to do that. He gives you Sanderlanche, big climax, awesome. And then like, oh, what about this plot thread where there's actually more to it? Oh, what about this one and this one?
Right.
It's almost like, I mean, Return of the King movie doesn't quite, it maybe not the greatest comparison, but there's a lot of endings to all of his books.
Yes.
And most of them are hooks into the next thing. It's like, if you liked what I just wrote, read my next book and there'll be more.
Funny that you said that, Steve, because I was texting Dylan. I was like, there's a final chapter, there's an epilogue, there's an appendix. I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, dude, isn't Lord of the Rings like your favorite series? They have like 1,000 endings.
I know. I was trying to say too, I mean, I tend to like whatever. This is toward the tail end of the episode. No one's made it this far, so they're not gonna get mad at me when I say I'm not the hugest fan of that end of Lord of the Rings, and like I think the Sanderson ending here is much better than Lord of the Rings ending. And I feel like what Sanderson does is he finds a way to actually like show you clearly when things have wrapped up and then just give you that hook at the end. While Lord of the Rings is like, wait, is it over? Like, oh, no. I guess what? Okay, now there's ruffians. What's going on with the ruffians? It's like, okay, I mean, that's not in that's not in the, it's not in the Return of the King movie, to be fair. You were talking about the movie, but in the book, it's like there's even more.
The book's even more,
yeah. So it's kind of like weird feeling, like something feels a little bit off about the Return of the King ending for me. But the Sanderson ending is like, ooh, there's like,
it's not near like the Sanderson ending is nothing near that style at all. It was just kind of funny that it was like this book is so long, and it's like, you know, oh, it was, what do they call them when they're in between parts? They were like
interludes.
Interlude 6. I'm like, okay, like let's how many like that's a lot of interludes, bro. That's more than I've ever seen in a story in my life. But he has the ending and the epilogue. It was just kind of funny. I was like, this book is like 1,000 pages long. Is it going to end? But
yeah, he definitely indulges himself a bit here, and he's talked about this. He's like, I couldn't believe that Tor went for this book because they've never published anything to this scale of like with all of the art inside of the book and the length and just the whole thing. Is it's like a big risk for them to publish this book, because if it doesn't catch on, they've committed to, you know, a pretty like sizable chunk of their business that isn't going anywhere. But I think Wheel of Time, I think he does credit like my ability to get in there and finish Wheel of Time really kind of sold it on them a bit. And so the Wheel of Time contract was really what kind of springboarded this and made this.
And he wrote Mistborn, you know. I feel like Sanderson, I feel like that's a really great point, Stephen. It is a huge undertaking for any publisher. And to me, that just speaks to Sanderson's reputation and all the goodwill that he's bought just by being a fantastic storyteller and just an author that writes and puts out books and delivers every single time. He's never not delivered. Like at worst, you're getting like a 6.5 out of 10 experience. At worst, he just delivers. And I think, Stephen, you're also right, where it's like, this is his baby. He's more self-indulgent in this than anything. And that's almost kind of what I'm excited to see, is him not necessarily being like, okay, this is my tight, like 3-book trilogy. I set this up, I set it and I end it. And then the publishers take it and run with it, and it'll be great in paperback and this, that, and the other. He's like, it's like, I'm just going to do whatever freak thing I can think of and experiment with and push, because this is my creative liberties. This is my anything goes. I'm putting everything into this. I'm going to dump anything into this. And
there is no unabridged version.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
This is
There's
it.
no unabridged 4. There's only bridge 4. I'm sorry. I really am
Oh.
sorry.
But a boom.
Yeah.
Oh, well, speaking of multiple endings, we've talked about all the main characters. We've talked about Bridge 4. And here's a good question, guys.
You can cut that, right, Charles?
It all stays
No way.
in.
It's
No
staying.
way.
We don't cut on this show. Unfortunately for me.
Unless it's a bad spoiler. We've cut sometimes, but that's really it. But
Yeah,
I would
bad
say
jokes stay.
bad jokes stay. Absolutely. Here's an interesting question that I think is good to pose at the end or near the end of our discussion. What is the talent that men value most, people? We're in the epilogue. This is the question that Wit poses to just some guardsmen. The answer, of course, is timeliness. Mm-hmm. So I think now is the time, this epilogue, right? I don't know if they explain who this guy is that stumbles into the courtyard, because I was kind of confused at who this was supposed to be. I don't.
Does it not say? Doesn't it say?
I do think he gives his name.
I think it's the name way back in the prologue. I think is where this name comes. He's one of the dudes, right? Like the original.
You gotta connect some dots. It's not
original,
easy.
He's a herald, right? Is that what he is?
Yeah.
Okay, but that required some. Whoa! I got to go back like 40.
It's like 1,000 pages ago.
Audiobook ago.
Yeah.
But that was the only thing that I could. But yeah, that was a little bit of. So I was like, who is this? Am I supposed to know? Like, but
it's fine that you don't know. No, there's plenty of time to.
I mean, yeah, even if it was just a mysterious being, it's kind of cool, right? It almost feels like the mid-credits trailer in a Marvel movie. It's like you get the rolling credits for like 5 minutes, and then it cuts to Wit talking to the guards, being like, "What to tell him, men?" Most this guy pops in. It's like,
is that Venom?
Too late. Yeah. Yeah, is that Venom at oh gosh, what's that place? Margaritaville? Whatever that was.
Right. No, it's it's the kind of thing with, as Stephen was saying, you don't need to know everything about it, and it is Sanderson. So there's that trust that you've been talking about, Charles, where it's just like, even if I don't know what's going on right now.
In any way, I was down with the whole thing. Yeah.
Wit's I mean, it's a tough one. I don't know how far to go with Wit from a, like, we're not trying to spoil anything in the Cosmere outside of Way of Kings, but just Wit's an interesting character to get.
He's an important character that Sanderson really likes.
Yes.
Right. And he does give the name Hoyd at some point in this book. So
he does.
Yeah.
He does. I was catching that. I can't say more, I guess. Some of the books that I have read, I was like, oh, this is the thing that's happening. Okay. Because, when you read all of these books, a lot of them take place in the Cosmere. So these books are tied together somehow. And it's just fascinating you don't really, if we do the Stephen's dad level of reader, you may not understand that they're connected as part of the Cosmere. And I know I was that reader for a long time. It wasn't until I got into the podcasting game and researched Sanderson actively that I was like, oh. And then I think he sold the movie rights years ago for became a millionaire doing that. And I was like, oh, dang. So for the Cosmere, and I was like, what's the Cosmere? Oh, it's like all his books. Okay. Got it. So
I actually don't know if he really made that. I don't think authors make a whole lot at the point that he sold it for. I think it's more just kind of like a studio snapping it up. I think he'll make a lot more if the movie actually gets made.
Oh, for sure.
But I still think like it was a Kickstarter, though. Let's be honest. He's doing okay.
Well beyond movie deal money. He's got like pure unfiltered Kickstarter money right in his bank account. So
this guy can just say, hey fans, give me millions of dollars, I'll do some stuff, and they'll do it. And I mean, it's earned. Like, this is a guy who, like we said, delivers every time. I've given money. There's a project that, like, Maisie Williams, who played Arya in Game of Thrones, was like acting it. I gave some money to for like a Kickstarter thing. That just never happened. So I was like, what happened to my money here? So it was called like God, it was I don't know. But point being, when you give money to Sanderson in one of those things, you know that it's going to a cause that will see the light of day. So
yeah. And to be fair, he's got a big company and employees and there's not many authors that are in this realm of things. And hopefully this money ends up, getting him some clout and we do see the big, cool film cinematic adaptation of the book we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this would make a cool movie series for sure. But it's so ambitious, though.
You get to choose Stormlight or Mistborn,
or specifically a movie.
Yeah, movie. That's even a tough question because I think he said that he prefers Stormlight to be a miniseries or a TV series.
It would definitely work better.
It needs more time. Mistborn makes more sense.
Stormlight. Let's go Stormlight miniseries then. Like, give it what it would be better served as, or a Mistborn movie. What would you rather? And assume it's getting the right amount of funding to make it good and all that stuff.
I'd rather have Stormlight.
Having only read one Stormlight book, I still feel like Stormlight's the answer because this is just Sanderson's. This is his pet. I say pet project, but it's also like his prime. This is the book that he has gone out and said, "This is my magnum opus." So you got to go for the ride on that one. And I love Mistborn. It would be a great action-packed thing to watch, but it's just not at the same. There's not as much meat outside of action that Way of Kings hasn't already done more of in one book. So
that said, I would almost think that we get a Mistborn movie first, assuming we get both, of course, in this perfect world. I think Mistborn a movie makes more sense.
Very digestible.
I don't think anyone wants to start Way of Kings and Stormlight before it's done. It's like, let's see what the ending is first. We want to make sure we're good on this one.
I think TV execs have learned that at this point.
Shout out to Game of Thrones. So let's I will say too, on this sort of Mistborn-y subject, still, even after reading Stormlight and all this stuff, I was talking to Charles a little bit beforehand, we were still thinking generic where to start with Brandon Sanderson. We did a whole episode and we kind of went through all these. Still makes more sense, I think, to start with Mistborn.
Oh yeah,
just as a jumping off point. Like, do you want to tell someone, hey, read this 1,000-page doorstopper, start with the prelude, and then you get into the prologue, and then it's like a lot to ask. So it's good when you can trust Sanderson, but before that, you might want to try something else. It's a tough one, but
for sure. I just feel like it'll be so much work to adapt Stormlight too, where it'll still be a lot of work to adapt Mistborn, but I feel it's way more possible, if that makes sense. Like, you can just have Mistborn cool action sequences and have 3 movies and be done, or have your show or whatever. You have to make some choices with Stormlight. You have to make some tough ones. So I wouldn't envy anyone with that task for sure.
Yeah, I can see Mistborn in my mind's eye. When I think about a Mistborn movie, I kind of can imagine it. Stormlight, it's even the miniseries. It's kind of hard to actually get a picture of what this is all looking like.
I agree.
Well, I will watch the heck out of any of it. So
same here. Whatever it is, we're gonna watch it.
I will kickstart as many dollars as are required.
But I want my money back for Corvidae, starring Maisie Williams. I think that's what it's called. Corvidae.
Pay up, Maisie.
Maisie. I added her on Twitter. I atted her on her birthday. I wished her happy birthday. No word in response. And
he's dodging you, man.
He's being really evasive since the Corvidae incident. I know. Come on, I'm one of your millions of followers. Why won't you respond to me?
Well, maybe next year. There's always another birthday, right?
Yeah, there's always another birthday.
Well, what do men value most? Timeliness. Let's start thinking about.
I thought it's
wrapping this
novelty.
up.
And there's nothing more novel than keeping an episode going far past.
It's timeliness.
Is this our longest?
It is. It is.
At first, he says novelty, but then he's like, it's actually timeliness.
Because someone just copies your idea a little bit later and they get popular. And then so it's like doing it at the right time was where he ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
right.
And now it's the right time to start thinking about wrapping up the episode. Steven, thank you so much for coming on, like kicking off our Stormlight Archive book discussions. Couldn't think of a better way to do it. Really appreciate you coming out. And
I'm excited to hear the rest of your thoughts, Charles, as you continue to read through. Yes, well, when we'll read the second one is yet to be determined, but I do want to read through the whole series. I'm excited to get into it, and Sanderson continues to deliver. That's all I'm going to say, and I have total faith in him for the next installment as well. But yes, thank you guys. If you like what you heard, go to Fantology. I don't know how many times you have to say it on the show. Fantology Books. They're a bunch of lifelong friends over there, and they talk about a lot of great series, and Cosmere being a prime example of what they discuss. So check them out. And then it's at Fantology Books, right? On all the socials.
Fantology_books.
Ooh.
On Twitter.
That is correct. Don't forget that underscore.
Don't forget the underscore, guys. It's a key part of all this. So Fantology_books on Twitter. Check them out. Yeah, guys, this has been a lot of fun. So much to talk about in this book. It's a long episode, but it needed to be. I mean, it could easily go twice as long, but I think we hit a good spot. So, Dylan, pleasure as always. It's good to be back. And thank you all for listening. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.